Hey everybody, how are you? Happy Wednesday. How are you this week? It's been a fun one here in Chicago. I've been very busy. I'm about to leave to go to Saugatuck this coming weekend. It's the Ruby Girls weekend. If you don't know, check it out, thedunesresort.com. Great place to be on the southwest side of Michigan. So I'm going to make this real quick because I have a video to show you. I did a storytelling event last night in Jarvis Square, at the Jarvis Square Tavern. That's in Rogers Park here in the city. And did a storytelling event. There was 4 speakers. I was the third one to go, and I talked about my first boyfriend, James, who has passed away, and it was a heartfelt story. And I'm very glad to share this with you. Gave you like a timeline of when we met and where things were ended. So, all good. So, I hope you enjoy this. I know everybody's attention span here on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, everything. Everybody's attention span is about 15 seconds. I'm exaggerating, but it's a little bit longer of a video, and I appreciate you watching to the end because it's such a great story. So, thank you for the support. Thank you to everybody that came and put on the event yesterday. And I will be back right around Tuesday or Wednesday for a video next week. I may do some short videos on TikTok of just the whole weekend, but you'll see an overview, I'm sure, when I come back on Monday. So, but I won't put it up on the web until like probably Tuesday, Wednesday. Okay? All right, I'll see you soon. Enjoy the video. Subscribe, like, and share. Be kind, be good to yourselves. Pray for peace in the world, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
We have Greg Baird. Greg is a global lecturer on LGBTQ+ civil rights, allyship, and community. He is the director and editor of the documentary 202 AM, which explores the tragic hate crime of the 2016 Orlando Hills nightclub shooting. He delivered a keynote address at the World Peace Conference in Ontario, California in 2020. Finally, he is the owner of a small side business called Gregor's Seasoning, where he sprinkles magic into meals with the finest spices around. Come on up, Greg.
Good morning, sunshine. Oh my God, he called me. I've waited 2 days, and he called me on a Sunday morning. But before I go on, I gotta tell you how this phone call happens. I went to school in Michigan at Central Michigan University, and I was one of the lucky gay guys in my group that had an apartment off campus with a car, a Delta 88 Oldsmobile called the Jam-Mobile. It was outfitted with the best stereo system you could ever listen to. I believe a lot of people probably lost their hearing in my car. Well, we were an hour and a half away from the closest gay bar called the Copa, which was in Flint, Michigan. The Copa was like stepping into the most incredible bar in South Beach, Florida, in Miami. It had fake palm trees in there. The dance floor was great. It was the best music. You could actually buy music. The mix that you heard that evening while you were dancing, you could go up and buy it on a cassette tape for $10 at the end of the evening. So I used to get a bunch of guys, sorry ladies, but a bunch of guys from my group from the local gay group here on campus at Central Michigan University. We would pile into my car, we would go down to Flint, Michigan, and then once we got in the bar, everybody kind of dispersed themselves. And this was on a Friday because at the Copa, it was only gay on Friday and Sunday. But it was a beautiful place. So we thought we were pretty fancy, so my friend Ted and I used to like look over the balcony, which was beautiful. He had chairs and little places to sit up on the side, a pool table in the back, and a huge dance floor, and the DJ was to our right, and we would sit there, and we thought we were very fancy, smoking the most masculine cigarette known to mankind, a Virginia Slim Menthol Light. Talking about being a good homosexual for some reason. Thank goodness I don't smoke anymore. But on one occasion we were there, and I was with Ted, and Ted goes, Greg, there's a guy over to your right looking at you. I'm like, no. You know, I had wished and prayed to the dear Lord to bring me a boyfriend, and you know, it didn't happen. I had weight issues as a kid, and I didn't feel too proud of myself, although I was a great guy to be around. It's just I never thought I got checked out. He goes, no, he's looking at you. So I looked over and I said, he's looking at me. He goes, well, go ask him to dance. So I finally got up the nerve to go ask him to dance, figuring I was going to be shot down. Now, mind you, they're playing a very fast song. The last thing you would want to do is ask for a first dance when it was a slow song. So I went up, I go, hi, what's your name? He said, my name is James. I said, my name is Greg, would you like to dance? I would love to. As soon as he said that, and we were going down the stairs to the dance floor, the song by Krista Bird came on, The Lady in Red. And it was our first dance. And it was nothing but magical, but awkward at the whole time, because you're thinking about, you know, you're dancing to some, you know, 80s, 90s remix, and it was The Lady in Red by Krista Bird. And it was a wonderful, wonderful dance. Had a nice kiss when we got done, and then we exchanged phone numbers. There was no cell phones at the time, and drove back in the J-Mobile to Central Michigan University, where I got the Sunday phone call, and it was James. So we had planned another day for the following Friday at the Copa, and being the hopeless romantic I am, I went to the local music store, and if you remember cassette singles, remember that? Cassette singles is not a 45, it was a cassette with one song on it, and guess what was on it? The Lady in Red by Krista Bird. So when I met him, I gave it to him, he was just like mush when he got it. He thought it was the greatest thing. So from that time forward, we started dating. I was down in Flint a lot. I stayed with them. We went to a movie, and it was April. And I knew that being in school, that my time was going to be up in May, and I was about to go to work at a camp in Connecticut called Camp Sloan. It was one of the largest summer camps on the East Coast where I was performing arts director. Well, James and I got really close, and I said, I'm going to be gone all summer, away from you. And he says, well, do they have any job openings? Well, I was over the moon, and I got him a job as a counselor there. So we drove out, stayed in Niagara Falls, Canada. We stayed there on the way back as well. But we got to camp. He was a counselor with kids and worked in the media area. I was the performing arts director, and we spent our days off when we had them. We went to Boston for a night off, day off. Went to movies, we explored the Berkshires. It was lovely. And then when camp ended, we're back to reality again. And I'm taking him back home. He lived in Flint, Michigan at the time, and I lived at college. And I said, this is going to be terrible. I said, I don't know what to do. I said, it's been so intense having you around. And he said, well, what do you think about me moving in with you at college? And I thought about it. I said, James, I would love that, but if you're going to move in with me, I want you to have some kind of opportunity to move in because I'm in school. Well, he thought about it not too long, and he moved in September. And of course, he didn't move. He moved in with me. He didn't find the right job. He worked for a telemarketer. And then we were starving college students, or I was with my friends. Well, he was kind of a blessing because he ended up working from that job. He worked at a KFC, and I always said, well, we didn't have ramen noodles at my house. We had lots of coleslaw and lots of cold chicken. So things were good, but I was concerned about him. He had a really shitty job, and I was getting my BA in secondary education. And I was on my last year of academics, and I was going to go do student teaching. And right around November, he said, I think I would like to move home. I don't want to break up, though. But we didn't know what to do. And he brought it up a few other times, and I finally unselfishly said, James, if you need to move home, I need to be unselfish. If you're going to be happier, I love you, then you need to move home. And he did, 2 weeks before Christmas. It was the worst Christmas of my life. Thank goodness I had 2 lesbian friends that coddled me and took care of me. I'll never forget, because I was a hot mess. I didn't see James for the longest time after that, and the next year I was doing my student teaching, and we talked every once in a while, but it was never the same, and it was awkward because we were so close. But that October I visited the Copa again, and of course how people were gossipy. Somebody came up to me, and this is the heart when people are getting HIV. And somebody came up and said, hey, listen, I want to let you know, everybody's talking about it, but James is HIV positive. And I was gut-wrenched. I didn't know what to do, and I hadn't talked to him. And about an hour later, he appeared at the bar. He was working at one of those haunted houses during the Halloween time where you could scare the shit out of people. And he showed up, and I said, honey, I need to ask you something. He said, is it what everybody's talking about? I go, yeah. And he goes, it's true. He goes, don't worry, because you're okay. He goes, it was somebody that I had been with about 4 months ago. And I said, listen, I want to tell you something. When I told you that I loved you, it was forever. So if things get rough, I'm there for you. And that was about it. So I didn't hear from him for the longest time after that, and this is 1991. We moved, did different things. I moved up north of Michigan, where I was doing some teaching and subbing and things. And about 1992, I heard from him briefly, crying on the phone to me how he missed me, but we were far away, and he had been through a couple of breaks up, and always compared the guys that he dated with what he had with me. So then I didn't hear from him again. So I acquired a job in 1996 at North Central Michigan College, and I had thought of James often. I thought, I'm going to try to get a hold of him. And this is way before we had our cell phones. And so I found out that he was living with his father in Flint, Michigan, and I called up the only Minter fairing in Flint, Michigan as a crapshoot, and James answered the phone. I go, hi, and I didn't even recognize the voice. I said, hi, is James there? And he went, Greg. So we had a long conversation, and he said, I need to let you know that I'm not well. My viral load is very high. I'm losing sight in my left eye, and I'm kind of thin. And I said, I would love to come down and take you from that environment and give you like a weekend away in northern Michigan. And I did that. I drove 4 hours from Petoskey to go pick him up and drove another 4 hours back. I ended up doing that for the next 6 months, every other weekend. And I kept on saying to myself, and I get chills talking about this, like, Greg, do you know what you're getting yourself involved with? Because I remember sitting in my apartment when I was working at a college, and my apartment was off the lobby of the residence hall. So I'm out making everybody very happy and organized, and then I close the door, and here's my former partner who's dying. And I remember his IV bag hanging off my halogen lamp. And one thing I didn't tell you is when I told him that I loved him, I gave him the zirconia ring that I got from a grocery store. I know, funny, but broke college student. And I'd given that to him as a sign of our love. And when we worked at the summer camp, backtracking a little bit, we were very open. The staff knew we were gay and everything, but the thing is, he worked with a lot of kids, so I remember going by his table when all the kids were eating, and this very ring I have on, he would do this. And that meant I love you. And so he held on to that ring for a long time, even when he was come up and being very ill. And then eventually moved in with his mother, who was only 2 hours away, and I ended up getting him health care, his mother health care, to take care of James. And I just knew things were going downhill. This is 1996 now. So right around 1997, I was visiting about every 2 or 3 weeks, and every time I went down to visit his mother and see James, there was something else that had happened. there's something, other ailment that had happened. And to make James laugh, I brought up a story that happened on our way back from Connecticut from our summer camp, that we had something known as a Dameron gun, and a lot of you don't probably know what it is, but a Dameron gun was this little hunky, thick book, and it had all the hookup places gay men could go to, roadside parks, you could go to hotel, bars, it had everything in there, and we found a guy that ran like a Airbnb out of his house in Niagara Falls, Canada. We thought we were hot shit, and we were there, and we felt like an actual couple. And we had gone out to eat, and I'm bringing up this story that would make James laugh because he always said he was the funny one. But we had gone to this horrible Italian restaurant. We walked out, and a guy walked by, huge gentleman, and this is before we had some acceptance of a lot of other communities, but the guy was all in leather, nose ring, everything. I mean, this is 1990 at the time. And James said, honey, how do you think I would look like that? And I came back very quickly and I said, lonely. And so when James was at his worst at his mom, he would be laying in a bed. I would say, honey, remember when we were in Niagara Falls? And I would get a laugh out of him. So November rolled around in 1997, and I went down to visit him. It was one of the last times I saw him. And his mom said, well, he's not talking, but he's alert. And she wheeled his wheelchair up to my little Geo Tracker. I had a little SUV, and I was going to take him out to eat. He couldn't talk. And I remember sitting in the car holding his hand, and we were going to go to McDonald's, and I knew what he liked. And big tears are going down his face, and I just felt gut-wrenched for him. Again, thinking like, Greg, you're following through with what you told him a long time ago. So I said, James, if you do 1 squeeze for yes, 2 for no, then I'll know you're okay. So I got through hand squeezes. I knew he wanted a Big Mac, fries, and a chocolate shake, which we got. And we went to a little place that was in Gladwin, Michigan. It was a park, and there was a stream in there, and we were at my little Geo Tracker, and we had the food on the dash, and I put the Big Mac on his lap in the styrofoam box, and opened it up, and I'm eating, and I look over, and with every emotion I could hold inside, he was holding the sandwich, but going, he couldn't feed himself. So what you and I would take about 8 minutes to finish off what we know as the Big Mac meal, or 10 minutes, we sat there for about 35 minutes because I was tearing off pieces of a Big Mac and feeding it to him. We got through the meal, and mind you, I experienced this kind of as if you would put an ice cube on a sidewalk in a hot summer. It was just kind of fading away. We got done eating. There's not a whole lot to do in Gladwin, so I was taking him back to his mom's. He was crying again. And I told his mother, I got back, I go, this is just like bothering me so bad. She goes, well, he does that if I go to the store, if I go to Walmart. I go, no, this is a little bit different. So I didn't see him for another couple of weeks. It's probably right after Thanksgiving. And when I went down that time, he was in bed. He was in a hospital bed. And not communicating at all, although he would hold and grip my hand. And when I was leaving to say goodbye, I knew that was going to be it, and he was crying. And I said to his mom, I go, he's crying. She goes, well, when I go to Walmart, no, this is different. So I went home, and a few weeks later, I got a phone call on January 2nd of 1998 that James had passed away from complications of AIDS. And you may think, well, wow, that's a horrible, sad story. Yeah. But I was given the greatest gifts of unconditional friendship and unconditional love that any human being could have been given. I made a quilt panel that's now traveling, the name's Project AIDS Memorial Quilt. That's in James' honor. I'm still in touch with James' mother, who calls me, lets me call her mom. She says, no, you're calling me mom. His family buys my seasoning that I make. So in a small way, his legacy is continued. And this is one of the first times I've spoke about him. But I think about him daily. I pulled the ring out just today so I could wear it. So you could see it. But thank you, my story of James.
Thank you.
Thank you for introducing us to James. That is a beautiful love story.